Hey there, welcome to episode 71 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this the day after Independence Day, maybe the last one ever, July 5, 2024. Today's topic, as you may have seen in the title, the missing piece shall remain missing. What is that missing piece? Well, it's missing. That's part of the problem. Usually I would have guests if the show was true to form. Back in the old days, I used to have a guest, and that's what impresarios are, as entrepreneurs or people pursuing some sort of an innovative notion. Maybe they're aspirational or nascent entrepreneurs. Maybe they just launched. Maybe they're mid-course. Maybe they just launched a product. Who knows? Could be anything. And first of all, it's difficult to get guests to do things in Vegas. The first question is usually, how many listeners do you have? And so we'll see. This figures into one of my projects that I'm working on right now. We may add video. We'll see about doing some video interviews or something. Video is more work. I know, boohoo. It's just more production. It's more equipment. I'm not really a YouTuber by any stretch, so I don't really have the lights and the equipment for an in-person, and square boxes on a screen is one way to go, but we'll see. But anyway, this is itself the Cafe Genius project, the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. All of this is yet another sort of entrepreneurial effort here in the greater Vegas area to check out. Well, the origin story is that it was a pitch workout room, needed a name put on by, and I said, I don't want it to be me, about Cafe Genius. And of course, Cafe Genius is inspired by a combination of an amalgam of Cafe Centro, which was where startups start, a coffee shop in South Park in San Francisco, near the baseball stadium. And I've been there. It's very nice. It's where Twitter got started, for example, for better or worse. So Cafe Centro in San Francisco, which is part of the real Silicon Valley, I figured, cafe with two Fs. Yeah, that's nice. And then back in the downtown project days, there used to be these lunch gatherings, just random people. Like if you wanted to go, or if you were invited, you would invite another person that might be kind of interested in talking about their startup or what they're working on or how things are going. And there's usually fruitful conversation, and we called it the Genius Lunch. So Cafe Genius combination. And Cafe Genius pitch workout room to try to get more people to begin their journey. If you have an idea and you haven't started talking about it, then, how's it going to happen? Good ideas don't start by sitting on the couch. So inspired by open microphone activities for stand-up comedy, music, other performances, just get up and do it. You got 5 minutes, etc. So that went reasonably well. And then we did the the Genius Roundtable, a Cafe Genius project. And the idea was to build up a familiarity with what makes up or what doesn't make up our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. At the time, it was the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but let's be honest, that's some innovation in there. This coincided with a study being done on the part of EDAWN and then sort of LVGEA and the GOED and all these other acronyms. An outside consultancy. We actually had an interview with Mo Collins to talk about her study and the report she wrote. And we had a nice conversation. Mo has since left her own company to pursue sort of a national scale effort at ecosystem development or something. So I've not been in touch with Mo. It would be interesting to take a look at how, now it's over a year later since the paper was published. Although I have to be honest, I doubt most people read it. So I disagree with, some of the assertions in the paper are sort of generic. They're not particularly Vegas specific. The paper was written about the state and then Washoe County, Clark County, and the rest of Nevada. So whether that was the best breakdown based on population, perhaps. Yeah, that's fine. But I would revisit the paper. I would revisit a part 2 maybe with Mo. Again, haven't reached out to see if that's even a possibility. But in the meantime, the Genius Roundtable was sort of in parallel and over a longer period of time looking at our ecosystem and what works, what doesn't. We had some different action items. Mine was to determine what we are lacking. And so I have a 15-page rough draft that I actually had shared with Mo. It's never been published officially. It's in need of some revision itself. It's about 18 months old now, 17 months, something. So it's a good starting point to look at things that need work. Part of what I think we need to accomplish is a real assessment of the downtown project, which is in the same footprint where everyone believes the next Silicon Valley will emerge here in the greater Vegas area. Well, we should understand what worked and what didn't in that context and learn. And this goes along with my meme, maybe, that we should stop trying to be the next Silicon Valley and try to be a better Vegas. So if we can really examine things, and that was the point of the Genius Roundtable, which didn't really get across to the other people at the table. So when it devolved into social time, it came to an end. And that was unfortunate. I think it could have done some good work, but there was no real interest. Solipsism reigns here in Vegas. So Cafe Genius continues, and this podcast, this audio program, continues as well. And do we do the retrospective on the downtown project? Eventually. It will be an uphill battle to even get people to care. So that's not cynicism, that's realism. So it will be a challenge, but I believe having that on tap in conjunction with a continuous or rolling introspection so that we have some idea what's happening from the perspective of people willing to, update various, sort of data points, whether they're an entrepreneur in the tech scene, which there is not one, or if they're a small business owner like a restaurant or something more traditional, not entering the fray of trying to be the next Google or Instagram or whatever. So if we can match the current state, so the plan was to make the introspection and the retrospection aligned so that we could compare not apples to apples directly, but at least, Washington Delicious to Pippin. They would be similar apples. So these are all things that are still on tap, and they all kind of figure into my own pursuits here. But I've largely exited the quote-unquote startup scene here because I have concerns about ROI and whether efforts expended are actually getting anywhere other than making gatherings where people can attend and check off a box. Oh, I must be part of the startup scene because I'm here. And that's just not getting it. So all those things said, hopefully you are able to find the episode. That was just the intro to the intro. You're able to find hopefully you're able to find the episode detail from wherever you have found this audio program. Within, you will find the show notes. As always, the host. It'd be nice if there would be a guest one of these days. We'll get back into that at some point. The summary of today's episode, which I will read to you, and then some links. There's actually only one for today, aside from my usual shameless self-promotion. And so the summary of today's show, everyone is quite sure that big tech innovation is happening in Greater Vegas with nowhere to go but up in the startup scene. And while the next Silicon Valley is not something we hear so often, which is a good thing, there does seem to be a belief that simply repeating mantras is enough to make it happen. It isn't. And I've been saying this for 2 years now. I know it sounds dismal, but fixing a problem, you have to start by saying there is one. So today's links, the usual buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Visit those. You are under no obligation to spend any money, but the Buy Me a Coffee site is kind of a general, I think people get it, so it's not like out of left field. It's a page. I can freeform some links and some text and whatnot. So there are links to all of my audio programs. And added another one that might return to see the light of day. So that's an update on that platform. And then Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. I actually added an update there too, and I will start using that more for interesting things as they start to occur in the coming, through the summer at least, and then we'll see what comes of it. So buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. That's ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. Shameless self-promotion over. And the article in the review journal I just read it yesterday. So on the 4th, I think, later in the day. The written by Sean Hammersmere, which that reporter is a disappointment to me, but such is life. Did another fabulous, impressive work about our entrepreneurial ecosystem. He interviewed the founder, and of course now, since I didn't write it down, let me pull this up. The founder, or the person driving or something, his name is Michael DeLuca. Don't know him, never met him, not connected to him on LinkedIn, not particularly interested in being connected to him on LinkedIn. The headline is, got an idea for a tech startup? You could get up to $10,000. Now, anyone who's trying to form a tech startup, if you're a solopreneur, if you're on your own, $10,000, that might be a nice, boot to kick you with. Get you up to the next step in the stairway up to the real money, as in enough to actually pay people or to, depending on what you're doing. But if you're a solo entrepreneur, if you're just doing a single person project, and in some aspects of what I'm working on now would fall into that category. So $10,000, that sounds interesting. Would I go pitch at this though? Honestly, I don't think it would be worth the time. But the article, if you read it, it's very fluffy, not really high value. They've had their first meeting, and I will tell you right now, this is enough to make me concerned. It's called Scared to Scale. Scared to Scale. Don't know what they're going for with that, other than, are you afraid to start your company? Well, here's not enough money. Good luck. From what I can tell, well, first of all, finding out information about this thing, they have a website, but I started seeing advertisements. I think because my startup project still has an Instagram account, I myself don't really use it, but I've been kind of reacquainting myself with the lay of the land of Las Vegas. Where are we? Of Las Vegas. I should run for president. The influencer / social media, especially the foodie scene in Vegas, etc. So I'm just seeing what's going on and the complete misuse of the platform of Instagram. I mean, it's devolved into look at me and advertisements. So, but I did see a paid placement, advertisement, sponsored, whatever, post about Scared to Scale. And I was like, what is this? And it kind of smacks of you'll see these on Meetup as well. There are people who are not in Vegas, but they're like, hey, Vegas startup pitch night or whatever. And it's virtual, all virtual. And then you do 4 seconds of research and you see, oh, this person has this meetup in every city that they want, So they're not tailored to the startup scene in Vegas, in the greater Vegas area. So not totally appealing, but I did start seeing these, and they had their first meetup in a cigar bar at Resort World, the 8 Cigar Lounge, in fact, on June 20th. So I guess that's when I was seeing the ads. It was before that. There are a couple of problems here, which we will never get over. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll just say that we really need to get away from you want to form a startup? Come to this bar, or come to a place that is 21 and over. You do not foment entrepreneurialism, where you also need a talent pool. So you should be, and one kudo to Tech Alley for having an event that was open to young people, although it wasn't attractive to young people. But at least it wasn't held in a bar, even though there is a bar at Taverna, but it wasn't a centerpiece of the event. It was mostly outside and in classroom settings and so on. So, but if you hold entrepreneurial encouragement events or you have your pitch nights or whatever, and they are not under 21 friendly, you are not inviting the future talent pool to participate. And let's be honest, Vegas doesn't have a talent pool for entrepreneurialism, especially if you're pushing tech startups. I think it's wrong to push tech startups, but it is what it is. So that was disconcerting. So just mentioning this article and going through, and by the way, Jeff Sailing from Startup NV is like, yeah, I guess, it's not a lot of money. It's not much. And I've never really met them. So kind of a shoulder shrug quote. Don't know. That's not real reporting. Hey, can you give us a quote about this thing? Well, I don't know who they are, but I guess so. That's not really useful. It'd be interesting to talk to people who attended that first meeting and see what the value proposition is and whether it was actually value to them. Valuable, I guess. So, yeah, I'm troubled by this. So, let's be honest. There is no startup scene in Greater Vegas. Now, I've actually heard this from other people, and I'm not alone on this. So, I'm glad to say that I'm echoing others at this point. But what does this mean to me when I say it? Well, there is a culinary scene. Surely, there's a giant and rather powerful, generally accepted to be powerful, and they get things done. They get contracts negotiated, and they make a lot of noise. And when they're doing that, and so they get attention, which is good. That's what they're there for. There is a bar, microbrewery, foodie scene. So you can see all that on Instagram. And this is not the same as the culinary scene is on the working side, the service industry, the kitchen, the art and craft of preparing food and drink, all the whole notion. But the customer side, there's an entire scene of content creators and reviewers and the eater and other similar outlets, blogs, press outlets, etc. They cover a lot of customer-facing, customer-oriented topics in this area. It's a big thing here, and that's good. Why not? There are many crime scenes here. I know that. There have been a couple around me in the last week or two. And those always get a lot of press, strangely enough. They always get the most press. If you ever want to have a startup that gets noticed, crime, that's the way to go. We have a tiny group of people who are startup curious or who are forming their startup. Maybe they just moved here from Silicon Valley. I've met a couple of those people. They come to a meetup of some sort. They look around and they're like, is this everybody? So they're startup curious. A lot of people are coming to learn more. I have a startup idea. There are, I believe, too many meetups in a, how can I be kind? There should be more people demoing or talking about practicality and not where's my money, silly. I mean, these are things that you should attend a focused, maybe not episodic meetup for. These are things where you actually learn. You are actually dealing with, how am I going to finance this? Is there true value in this? So when you attend a meetup that is, pardon me. Yeah, sorry about that. That is supposed to be the anchor of the startup scene. And it should be more about activity, not about pitching services. Because that's not what the startup scene should be made of. The startup scene should be made of people doing things, and on the periphery, there should be services for them, whatever those may be. I need to figure out how to fund my startup. Okay, don't make that the entire focus of what the startup scene is about. First of all, that's already a problem in Vegas. So don't make it seem like, oh no, it's easy, founder, funder. Access to capital is still the main problem that everybody has. So it deserves a little bit more professional attention and not, I mean, hey, if you want to kill an hour, and anyway, so you have a lot of entrepreneurs pursuing their companies of various kinds, and they show up and they figure, I guess I'm in the startup scene now, and I don't think that's really healthy. Now, I will point out for those who may not have heard previous episodes or be familiar with my background, I was in Silicon Valley from 1993 to I moved to Vegas in 2013 in July of 2013. So between 1993 and 2013, I did take a break right around the 9/11 crime. So I moved to Phoenix for 4 years to take a break. Then I moved back to Silicon Valley. So I was in Silicon Valley for the dot-com boom. And I took advantage of that where I could. I was just out of college, so I really added a lot to my resume. I worked at a 4-person startup. I founded my own efforts. They weren't stellar, but definitely all learning experiences. Worked at companies like Netscape and Philips and Apple and Salon.com, my media highlight there. So I did a lot of stuff, and I was there for the beginning of the dot-com boom, but I wasn't just there. See, now if you were in Silicon Valley and you're just looking around like, hey, I'm in Silicon Valley, you can't really say I was in Silicon Valley, but I was there. I was doing the thing. So all different aspects, all different sizes of companies, contracting, consulting, W-2 employee, got the big stock option thing that never went anywhere, chased the stock options, which was a bad idea, I think. I mean, I'm more of a purist, I guess. I like the technology. I wasn't there to just rake in the dough. I think founders should be the ones who capitalize, well, anyway, that's a different thing. So I would love to see people that are doing things. And I remember people in Silicon Valley, when you'd go to a meetup or a gathering, it was people talking more casually, less structured, less like, okay, it's time to switch. It was a lot more about what we're doing. And if you watch Silicon Valley, the HBO series, it is obviously overdone. It's to absurdity, really. But not all of those things could happen to one company and have that company still be around. So they basically made them the focus of every good and bad thing, often at the same time. But, they often had people going to meetups and gatherings, and whether it was demo, where they launched the middle out idea, or pool parties or whatever, there was always these things. You could go hang out and I'm going to go see who's doing this or that. Much less overhead, I guess. It would just kind of happen and you'd hear about it. And there was no, event website culture. There was, I think, Eventbrite. I think that was around. But it wasn't like, oh, let me check Meetup and see what's going on. It was, word of mouth, and there was always an email list going on somewhere. So if you were going to say there was a startup scene in Silicon Valley, nobody would argue with you. And there wasn't the stuff that's going on in Vegas. So I think the stuff that's going on in the greater Vegas area in this regard is an attempt to say, hey, don't forget, there's a startup scene. Show up this Saturday because there's a startup scene. Hey, we're having another meetup way down south, way far away from most of the people who live here. If you want to have another meetup about the startup scene. So hey, everybody, hey, there's a startup scene. Did you hear me? So I don't think there's the same level of energy or interest, but the people who attend, I have found it's probably about 20% like I'm doing something and I really don't have time to be here. And then 80%, I just like to be around other people who think they're doing something. So I know it sounds harsh, but somebody's got to be real. Put another way, if we had a startup scene, we would have more. And you could fill in the blanks. More funding resources, more pitch nights, and general excitement about potential possibilities. More ideas across more topics. So there'd be more things going on. More local entrepreneurs. If you have a pitch night and half of your people pitching are from out of state, that should be a concern, a mild one perhaps, but because pitch nights are mostly driven by investment potential, right? So if Startup NV is hosting a pitch night, they want to know if any of their investors are going to be investing, and they're there to service their investors. And investors want return on investment. They don't necessarily care that they're in the greater Vegas area. In fact, they may find where the startup is based is more conducive to their success. Who knows? That's what they're there for. More startup co-founders. You should be able to start a company here and say, hey, do you want to start? Oh, that sounds really interesting. Let's go meet up and let's discuss. More people wanting to work at startups. And again, this starts with not preventing under 21-year-old people from attending these events. More news and discussion about startups. You shouldn't be looking in the review journal and find one article that isn't about the fun economy or real estate or whatnot in the business section, right? There should be a lot more updates. They shouldn't be long form articles. They could take the form of almost like tweeted, a little bit bigger than tweets, but brief updates just as an indicator, like a weather report, like, hey, do we really have whatever the ridiculous number they came up with from Deal Room in the Mo Collins study? Do we have thousands of startups here? Maybe. If you, the other day, which would be a week or two ago, I was talking about small business in the country and in Nevada. So 82% of small businesses in the United States, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, are solo entrepreneurs or single, no employees. And I was like, wow, I wonder if it's higher in Nevada. It was actually 2 points lower. It was about 80%. But still, 80% of small business, so that may include entrepreneurial startups, are individuals, one person, not hiring. So that does make the scared to scale thing interesting. For $10,000, you should be scared to scale. You don't have enough money to scale. But if we had a startup scene here, there would be more sort of energy behind the people that are actually starting up things, or they're pursuing real things, and they're maybe have a co-founder speed dating night, which was something we talked about in the Cafe Genius collaboratory, the first one we had, which was about better meetups. Right? Just having people mill around at a cigar bar or at the next scared to scale thing is going to be at a different bar. Totally misses the point. Startup NV is hosting Ignite Vegas, which they don't advertise. Well, they do advertise it via paid ads on Instagram. I think I've seen one mention, but they don't. There's really no landing. They don't feature the people that are participating well. And from what I understand, because I have not bothered to participate, that's a longer story. Well, they're holding it at a bar, of course, and their Ignite talks are aimed at pitching or pitch adjacent. When we were doing Talks on Vegas, the whole idea was to not pitch. Talk about your interest, educate. What is it? Inform, enlighten, educate. No, inform, entertain, not inform. Entertain, enlighten, educate. Right? Do one of those. Not everything has to be a pitch. But by making everything about pitches, there's this notion that, oh, pitching is the thing to do in the Greater Bay. This is it. That's what you got to do. No. Sometimes you can just talk about stuff. You can be a person and interact with other people and tell interesting stories to educate, enlighten, and entertain. So talks will make a return, by the way. Don't count that out. But Ignite, I don't think they're doing a good job. I don't think they're doing well, and they don't post any videos or anything that I could find. So who knows? I think they're starting this during Startup Week, which was sponsored by Techstars, and I didn't participate in that either because I'm working on my stuff. I don't need to go hang out with other people who might someday think about working on stuff. My impression, though, was that it's basically the same sort of 300 people that show up to things. About 120 to 150 go to Tech Alley. Other people go to what is now Startup NV, Level Up or Link Up or Goof Up or whatever it is. It's just the same. It's not thousands of people. So these thousands of startup or thousands of small businesses or whatever the metrics they use seem outlandish. But here's the big thing. Here's the thing that I want to know. The Downtown Project was kind of, I always use the word blooming. It started before, but when I moved here, no, coincidentally, it had nothing to do with it. I moved here in July of 2013, like I said, and the Downtown Project was just blooming, like I said, into 2014. And they had a 5-year plan. I guess it pretty much went through the 5 years, and not much remains in a tangible. I mean, there's still a Downtown Project entity. Some of the outcomes of that are still around. Of course, Tony Hsieh passed away, unfortunately, but the remnants are around. I mean, it's still in the same footprint. So between 2013, 14, and now, so 2014 to now is 10 years. We have been in this, we're going to be the next Silicon Valley. There's a tech scene, there's a startup scene. Tech startups are big. It's going to be huge. We're an innovation hub, blah, blah, blah. Let's say it's been 10 years. There's a 10-year window of Downtown Project and whatever remains. And by the way, there are some restaurants and some success stories in the non-tech space. Eat, still going. That was a success story, and the entire story of that restaurant is noteworthy. So not everything has to be a tech startup to be successful and worth checking out. I've been to Eat. It's delightful. So we have 10 years. We should have more startup failures that indicate a willingness to take risk. And we should have more people talking about those as learning experiences, as an indication that failing is actually part of succeeding. I'm not seeing that, or it's not being made visible. So startup theater, that was what we have. When I saw that Scared to Scale article, I was reminded just how rough it is here if there ever might be a startup scene. And by the way, there's always an assumption that all startups are tech startups. The only ones that matter, the only thing that's happening in the startup scene is tech startups. What's your app? What are you building? Luckily, there are people who are not so tech oriented who accept, like if you get a non-tech person talking to another non-tech person, they're like, oh, good. I'm not building an app either. Maybe you're starting a food truck, opening a coffee shop, opening a retail outlet, a new microbrewery in the brewery district. So there are many opportunities to be entrepreneurial and to do something even innovative. Not everything has to be tech, and tech kind of creeps into a lot of things anyway. But it doesn't have to be the star of the show. You don't have to be a tech startup. So there's always an assumption though that are you building an AI app? And that's sort of the messaging from Startup Envy. I don't know about Angel Envy or these other silly programs they have here, but the notion that you have to be building an AI or mobile app or some other completely tech-focused thing, otherwise you are not interesting, is a failing, and that's unfortunate. So if we count all entrepreneurial efforts, we might actually have a startup scene of some sort, but they're all busy working on their startups. They're getting their business open, doing their tenant improvements, getting their permits or their health department clearances or whatever. So they aren't milling around on a Saturday convincing each other that they're in the startup scene. So everything of interest is a tech startup. We have one gatekeeper in Startup NV. And by the way, I just discovered, I just noticed, I'm trying to avoid LinkedIn, but I looked at one of the co-founders of Startup.Vegas, which merged with Startup NV, and that co-founder doesn't even have it on their LinkedIn profile anymore. Totally removed. Interesting. And it's not there at all. And I have to wonder, is Generator, I think they had some sort of a pitch night or something a couple of months ago. They had a Governor Sisolak back then announcing their entry into the Nevada entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, trying to be a part of the terrain, the environment that will foment big things, big startups. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't get any. There's no. Why is there not a news article in the Review Journal about Generator? Maybe there was. Who knows? It gets no attention. Who knows if they're even still around? So Startup NV is the big 800-pound gorilla. If you look at their track record, it's not wonderful. They have what they have to work with. So, it's not one single finger to point in blame. But if we were being successful, if we were truly this big, about to blow up, exceptional startup mecca, no offense, shouldn't there be more, as I mentioned? Shouldn't there be at least one or two other starting points? Startup NV is horrible for that, by the way. You should be able to go, I want to start a business. How do I do it? Well, here's the first 10 things you need to do. None of them are contacting SBDC, nor SCORE, nor trying to figure out where Josh Levitt or Jamie Schwartz are. here are things you really should do to get started here, and offer that as a utility. And that's what the missing pieces I'm going to get to here. And so, of course, I'm biased. I think they're doing it wrong. I think we had a better idea, which is dead. So I will talk about it. We have little gatherings going on going through the motions. So we're talking a big game, but we fail miserably connecting youth with the future, and we mistake showing up for doing something. And I've been saying this for a couple of years now. You cannot merely check a box. Hey, I'm doing something. And I've referred to this previously. There's a really good video interview with CoffeeZilla, who has since become better known for finding crypto scams and reporting on them and getting sued by Logan Paul and so on. But he did a really good hour with a professor, and maybe I'll talk about it more in a future episode, perhaps. Again, but the fake entrepreneur syndrome, and I believe we have that here. So people will celebrate the announcement. Hey, I'm starting a thing. Yay, golf clap. And then you never hear from them again. But such entrepreneurs will appear at these events. Hey, how's your thing coming? Oh, yeah, we're moving along. We're doing our thing. We're And before you know it, you're like, oh, I've changed direction now. I've pivoted into, onto another planet. So talking about startup ideas, and I'm as guilty as anyone about when I talk about a lot of ideas, kind of float them, see what people respond with and so on. But I'm actually working on them. But as an army of one, it takes forever sometimes. And I have faced enough of the fake marketplace here in Vegas. So you waste a tremendous amount of time and energy in these events and so on if you are actually trying to accomplish something, or if you actually get buy-in from someone and they indicate some level of commitment to participate in something, and then you find out, oh, this is Vegas. I really need to remember words are cheap. So the talent pool of tomorrow is hanging out in 7th grade, or maybe about to graduate from college, somewhere in that 10-year window. They should be, and then none of those people are 21 perhaps. So most of them are not. So any hope of having a startup scene must be inclusive of at least, upper high school, college, having events that they can attend and participate in is where the value is if you think about tomorrow, but people don't. Obviously, startups are forward-looking, hopefully, and not always successful, which is important to realize. But usually there is a startup scene. Oh, I'm sorry, a startup scene. That's when I skip a line. Usually there is a there in the startup scene. So if there is a startup scene, if the same approach is taken with claims, headlines, and hype about this fictitious startup scene as there is with startups, we should be asking if there is anything actually going on. So that is to say, people often on LinkedIn, really, I don't see much in the way of, aside from the ads, paid ads, I don't really see much influencer attendance out of it. I don't see someone doing Instagram reels or TikToks unless it's the same 300 people. So that's just, just pointing the camera in. But why not talk about innovation as part of the Vegas scene from people outside of the so-called startup scene? Don't know. Where am I? So where are the people? That's been my question for my entire time here. Where are the people working on their startups? Are they making progress? Finding success? Are they finding success because of the greater Vegas area? Are they finding it because of the resources that are here? Is it the startup scene? That's what's doing it? Inquiring minds want to know. So to be clear, since I kind of flubbed that up at the beginning there, we talk about, I kind of interrupt myself here. We talk about the startup scene, the innovation hub, the next Silicon Valley. You can see people posting these headlines, mostly on LinkedIn. Very exciting. They view Tech Alley as like, this is it. This is what we need. There was some traveling around to different startup cities, and there was a visit to Plug and Play in Silicon Valley. It was actually the location I lived near, so I'm familiar. I've been in that location. I've talked to people there and so on. And well, that's it. All we have to do is go to Silicon Valley in 2023 and do this. And I always tell people, Silicon Valley started in 1947. You don't just snap your fingers and like shake and bake a Silicon Valley. So I think the notion is easy to talk about. And I have to be wondering if the startups in the startup scene, if the people that are pursuing these are maybe doing something similar. I don't know. But I would really love it if we had more interest, more focus, more events talking about works in progress. Like, hey, you heard me do my pitch 3 months ago, 6 months ago. Here's where things are. Here's a mid-course update. We're launching our beta. There was an opportunity for someone to have a beta. That is where you let people try out your feature complete but not quite ready yet thing, whatever it is. And I've talked about this before. You can have a beta drink. You can have a beta iced tea. Hey, we're trying something new. You want to taste it? So how do we get people in the greater Vegas area to embrace this entrepreneurialism, this innovation, and be a participant in trying these ideas out? We're really too enamored with startups and pitching. We don't really get into the details about actually doing something. So we're really all about hype and we're not so concerned with execution. Somebody else should do that. So now on to the missing piece, a little shameless self-promotion of sorts for the now dead Startup Resource Center, which was to be the gateway to the Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. My belief from the Downtown Project days as an observer, I never had a startup. I was never part of the Downtown Project, but I was adjacent, I suppose. I would visit. And as once everybody heard that, oh, you're the Intel guy, that literally, you're the Intel guy. The only Intel employee around, got a lot of attention. So I was very curious and interested in what was happening here. And I would talk about Vegas when I was at the various hackathons and other innovation events outside of Nevada. People were always curious, like, what's going on? Is it just gambling and drinking there? And eventually I would just say, yeah, it is. But from those times, there was an assumption that wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to be entrepreneurial, and having some meetings. So once people got here, having some meetings, like some meetups and alcohol-enabled gatherings, there was always some sort of drinking involved, whether it was for net or whatever, which kept the crowd to the 21 and older, which is, again, unfortunate. Is it enough to make it happen? Is it enough to create a startup scene or to create this innovation hub notion? Do you have to be proactively involved, or can you just say, okay, you're here, good luck? Which is, I think, how the people providing the hype are not necessarily connected to making that hype real. They may be one character, but is there a plan? Is there something like the Startup Resource Center? I mean, that's the whole notion that we were trying to develop was, when people get here, you can't just say, oh yeah, look up these people. Good luck. You can do that. You won't get the success rate that you are pretending you're going to get. You just won't. Why? Because if someone showed up in Silicon Valley, and remember, I was there. I landed in July of 1993 after college. I went to Harvey Mudd College, very nerdy school, was featured as one of the sources of talent that enabled Silicon Valley to get where it was. I found that hard to believe, but it was Berkeley, Stanford, and Harvey Mudd. Don't know how that happened. I think it was U.S. News and World Report from like 2014. I've never been able to find that article, but other people were saying that to me. Wait, you went to Harvey Mudd and you work at Intel and you live here. Interesting. So if you got to Silicon Valley with an idea, you would immediately encounter 10 other people that might be interested or interesting. I always used to say, if you were sitting in a coffee shop in Silicon Valley during the really interesting times, and somebody, you or anyone in the shop, said, "I have an idea," the hush over the crowd, everyone would lean over a little bit. What's the idea? What's the idea? That's a dramatization. But the fact is, there was that level of interest and energy, and the talent pool was deep and broad. The I used to say this of Phoenix, and this may not even be true in Phoenix now, but it is definitely true here in Vegas. I've done it. If you're if you're in a coffee shop here, you can literally yell, "Hey, I have a startup idea," and nobody cares. So it's a completely different place. And if you arrive on the hype train, the moment you get off, you are told to get your own bags and get your own way into town. And good luck with that. And I think that's not ideal. And there, you may counter with, yeah, but Startup NV has their Innovate NV or whatever it is, and they have a free classes on. Okay. Just remember, they're focused on tech and they're driven by investors. Their entire goal, their entire mission is to get ROI for their investors. So they may be part of the community, they may be trying to help people, but you have to realize what their actual KPIs are. By mentioning a few names as anchors, entrepreneurial support organizations, as I guess that's the term, could be one person. And then a few acronyms for subpar services, which I've already covered. SCORE. Try to find out what SCORE stands for. You can find it. I have, but it's not easy. They don't really tell you on the website. And I will tell you that the R and the E at the end stand for retired executives. But we do nothing to make Day Zero valuable for anyone who would like to form a startup here. And I have talked to those people in pursuit of this project. And by the way, if it isn't a tech startup, move along. Go down the road a bit. We have our sights on unrealistically high, set on unrealistically high, on gotta be the next startup hub, the next tech the scene, the next all that. We gotta have the apps. Truth be told, there are probably more autonomous vehicle companies trying things out in Vegas because of the regulations and the upside, which I talk about frequently. The 40 million visitors to the area can, some fraction can try out your self-driving car. They may not be able to do that in their city. It may not be legal to operate on the roads an autonomous vehicle. So there are several. I just saw a list, which I have completely spaced on, but say it's like 5 or 6 that are really operating, testing here. So that's good. Not everything has to be an app that someone installs on their phone. It could be tech adjacent, or there may be very little tech, maybe just cool, innovative. Imagine that. This gateway, so the Startup Resource Center as a gateway, you step this way into the startup scene here in Vegas. We were supposed to provide valuable resources, hence the name, Startup Resource Center. And by the way, I was in Eindhoven one time when I was working for it was after I worked for Philips. I went to their expat center. So you could go into this specific space geared towards welcoming people to the area from other places. Different resources in different languages. The Dutch speak all of them, so that was easy. A meeting space, a bar downstairs so you could socialize, but it was not the focus of the place, so it wasn't a bar. They happened to have a little bar. It was like something you would find in a what do you call it? A man cave, a person cave, a Dutch person cave. So, like behind the bar, there was room for one bartender and maybe a beer tap or something. It was tiny. But again, not the focus. The focus was here. You go here, get some resources, and hey, how do I open a bank account? Things like this. So the idea was to provide this Day Zero starting point. We called it the Startup in a Box. Here you go. Here's a bunch of discounts, offers, meetups, things that you should go to. A curated list, right? Would Scared to Scale be on there? Not sure. Would Tech Alley be on there? Maybe. Go there once, but don't think it's the end all be all. It's the beginning of your journey. It's not the solution. Should I attend this or that? So we'd have a kind of a rolling curated list of things that would be valuable for Day Zero, like things you should consider going to. And we were planning, hey, we could have a mixers. We could connect the Genius Roundtable participants as now entrepreneurs in residence that are familiar with the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So the whole plan was completely viable until we asked for the city of Las Vegas to be supportive of that in any way. And suddenly the reply button stopped working. So the one-stop shop, Like, here's the way to get the best foot forward. Here are the things you really need to know. Not here are the 3 people you should reach out to and find. Good luck. 2 horrible agencies that are not very helpful here. They may be elsewhere, but they're not very helpful here. I've tried. Other places that are attempting to be not Silicon Valley, but hope to encourage entrepreneurialism in their localities, have offered a similar service. So nothing about this was necessarily creative or innovative. It was entirely practical and based on learning from the downtown project. Are we good at applying what we may have learned if we don't learn it here? Well, no. So my take on the situation at hand after being here for 11 years, it will be 11 years August 1st. Technically 11 years July 15th, I think. But, if we're talking like what I wrote on my TMV to get my license plates when I still had a car, August 1st, 2013. So an interesting 11 years here, having watched the Downtown Project as a spectator and its various ups and downs. I had high hopes for some sort of ecosystem potential. I figured, hey, if people saw that happen, then it's possible to take that memory and education that could be derived from this. Again, what worked, what didn't, where do we go? I've been proactive about pursuing that. This audio program is one of the pieces, and interviews with more people doing things will be one of those pieces. The Genius Roundtable, of course, the Downtown Project retrospective, and then the rolling introspective. These are important pieces to figuring out what's happening without the hype, like real measurements, real data, real and ongoing feedback to judge the lay of the land. At a fundamental level, though, this is not going to bring much ROI. What I'm doing is really to understand the ecosystem that I am a part of, but I'm not doing it to get rich or anything. I'm not saying like, okay, here's your startup in a box, give me money. That was never the goal. The goal was to make it a service for people who wanted to take a chance on this ecosystem. It is far too easy, and I have taken photos of them. I've seen the marketing materials. Move to Vegas, become a local, as if you can just show up and they hand you a bunch of money and upside and like, oh, you'll be successful in the next 30 days. So they make it sound like it's a lot easier than it is. As any entrepreneur should know, it is important to fail fast. In this case, stop buying the hype and realize that this is about rugged individualism first and foremost. So when I say fail fast, the Startup Resource Center is never going to happen as it was conceived by me and 2 other people. I don't even talk to those 2 other people. I don't even know if one of them is still around. Who knows? Vegas is a ghosting culture. But the Startup Resource Center, I had the domain src.vegas, source, a play on the user lib from the Downtown Project days. So start at the source. The Startup Resource Center is dead. It's not going to happen. So that is failing fast. The notion did not last for 1 year. Not worth the time. But it was never going, it was intended to be like a 501c3. And to this day, I will continue to say it, there needs to be a startup chamber of commerce. So we were talking about that as a sort of an adjacent 501c6 business league or chamber of commerce for startups to represent the interests of startups that are not able to pay the dues to the chamber of commerce, who don't get the attention. That's never going to happen either. Let's be honest. But it is possible to do some of these things by making the populace more informed and more interactively informative. So that's what one of my projects is, which I've talked about previously and which will get more attention in coming weeks, hopefully. So I had high hopes for some ecosystem potential. I have been proactive about it, and I don't see much coming from the efforts I've been expending here. So then the question is, well, how should I focus my time here versus focusing my time on that rugged individualism? And it turns out, really, rugged individualism should be almost 100%. So everything I'm working on now is focused on Vegas as a destination, which I've talked about previously. If If you think, hey, I have a startup, I should move to Vegas, you should come to Vegas, hang out for a while, assess the startup scene, and then decide if you should move to Vegas or if you should just visit Vegas. The innovation destination, quick rundown, if it's a hub, which the Clark County wanted to build yet more innovation district, we already have one. It's maybe being underutilized, so do we need another one? And they emphasize that there would be bars and restaurants and hangouts. Yeah, we have those too. What they don't have is a lab space, is a technical workspace. You can set up a desk in a coffee shop. Can you? And maker spaces are useful. We have about 1% total. If you grab all the maker spaces in Vegas, we have 1% of a good fab lab here. So if you're going to make an innovation hub, it should be capable of fomenting innovation, not people hanging out. We already have that. That's what Vegas is. So complete disconnect, in my opinion. Innovation destination. You take available resources, so maker spaces, maybe we do not have the ability to turn prototypes here anywhere near as capable as you would find, none of the capabilities you would find in Silicon Valley. I've always said this, in Silicon Valley, you could just go up and down the freeway, 101 freeway, and get FCC certification. You could do thermal testing. You could do prototypes. You could do circuit board layout. You could do software development. You can, it's almost like the manufacturing cities in Guangdong in China, right? Everything you need is at the outer rim on a spoke in a little circular enclave of manufacturing and production, right? So we don't really have that here. So first thing I would suggest is enable some of those resources here, probably starting at UNLV and the tech park. So we have the very beginnings of beginnings, but we do have like 1 million hotel rooms. We have a lot of internet access here. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. We have a lot of reasons for people to visit here: trade shows, conventions, the fun economy. But you can also have your company employees, if they're spread around the world, you can have them all meet up in Vegas for a week or two. And there are accommodations, there is internet access, there are things to do for the family if they'd like to bring their family along. And then when you're done with your week of innovation sprint, go back, send your employees back to your home. You don't have to move here. You can take advantage of the resources here and the centrality. You can make use of the destination city that is Las Vegas by making an innovation destination. We don't have to be the next Silicon Valley. We can just be a better Las Vegas. So everything I'm working on is focused on that. Vegas as a destination. And yes, even focusing on the fun economy, because that's a big reason why people come here, rather than as an innovation hub. Though it may be that innovation destination, which is why I have a second project which goes along with the SRC domain. I just repurposed it for my own. I bought it. Why not? And this is something I'll be interested in talking about soon. A way to connect innovation to the people visiting here, though. That's the essential component. Something I've talked about for 10 years. I spoke about it with the LVGEA. They said, that's a great idea, and did nothing. So I figure it's mine. I still believe discoverability is a dramatic gap here in the greater Vegas area, whether it's people who live here or people visiting. It needs to be filled. And so that continues to be one of the main goals of my primary undertaking, which I've talked about previously in other episodes, my current focus startup effort at the moment. We should know more about what is really happening in this so-called startup scene. And while we might be disappointed that it isn't as galactic in size as the hype might have, we're not going to blow up anytime soon. There's about, like I said, there are about 300 people that show up to things, and they're visible, and they're like, oh, okay. That group, oh, I saw you at all of the other startup tech scene, whatever related meetups. Okay. So you see the same faces, same people. One of the reasons I'm not totally down with getting guests is because I kind of saw I'm not making excuses here, but one of the problems is you start to see the same people. You get the same 10 or 15 people that are willing to take some time and sit down for an audio or video production. Okay. we're not learning. So I want to hear more from people who have failed here, people who have recently moved here and been disappointed. Let's learn why. People who have learned here and found success. Let's learn what worked, what didn't. And then we can also talk about the introspection and retrospective stuff. And all of these things all fit into this this platform I'm developing to enable and encourage information sharing that isn't gatekept by the likes of the Review Journal and the Las Vegas Sun, which are our statutory official papers. It's in a Nevada revised statute. Those are the two official newspapers, quote unquote paper. So there must be better ways, and there must be other outlets that don't spend all of their time talking about real estate and construction on the Strip and money to be made from professional sports and the other fun economy. When the Chamber of Commerce, the Vegas Chamber, does business meetups, they are really focused, how can we leverage the fun economy? How can we make the Super Bowl experience recurring and benefit from professional sports year over year for, whatever. So they're really focused on niche, and they're really focused on companies that want to take advantage of that, not necessarily, your generic startup or small business. That's why I believe there should be a Chamber of Commerce for startups. Anyway, it all starts with knowing what you don't know and being able to discover these things, which is where the starting point is from my perspective as a person in the Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. I think it's being left on the table. I think gatekeeping and poor journalism that we can see every day are preventing potential from being realized just because nobody knows what's happening here, unless you're building or tearing down a resort or committing a crime. That's all I got to say today. Happy Independence Day, the end of an interesting and tumultuous week, the end of a tumultuous 2 weeks, really, in the world of what is going on in America in the near term and possibly for evermore. So thanks for taking the time to listen to this whenever you did. I would be interested in new and interesting guests, by the way. I don't mean to shun guests. So if you're doing a startup, if you're pursuing an entrepreneurial endeavor, if you have some innovative idea and you think Vegas is the place, or if you have come to realize that it is not, I would be interested in having a conversation if you would. So you can always find me at media at Cafe Genius. CaffeGenius.org. Media at cafegenius.org. Don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com. By the way, I need to have a guest sign up form or a invite or something on the list. Don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. Neither require that you pay any money. You can if you want. All proceeds, if there are any, do indeed go towards coffee, which is what powers all of my projects. And each of those platforms is where I will place updates to things like when we finally launch websites, when we add video to the mix, if and when we do, and more. Thank you again for listening. Cheers.